Google. So also echoing some of Paige's experiences of how Google is building a lot of these things, and we are super excited to just be building on top of that infrastructure. Also to really deploy AI in an enterprise setting and sort of what the challenges are. So would love to chat more about that.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Google, and thank you, Fresh, for having me. Currently, I'm the CEO of Meiti Startup Hub, taking care of the deep tech startup ecosystem in the country. And prior to this, I was the Chief Innovation Officer of T-Hub, which is one of the largest innovation ecosystem in Hyderabad. And been in the corporate world for 15 years, academia, and now last 8 years in government, trying to build the startup ecosystem. So that's pretty much what I do now.
Thank you. I think that shows the diverse perspective that we are going to have. Just to kick off the discussion, I want to start with you, Paige. If everyone have access to Gemini level intelligence, that we have today, what does the developer experience looks like? I mean, especially when the user is AI agent, not the person. Would love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, so I think we're finally getting to a place where the models are about to become ubiquitous. We already have versions of our Gemma model family, which is the open models that Google produces, that surpass the capabilities of Gemini 1.5 Pro. So you can have in your pocket, small enough to fit on a mobile device, a model that's truly capable, that can do a variety of tasks, that's blazing fast, and that's also very, very cheap. And so when you play that forward and think of what happens when near perfect intelligence is blazingly fast, $0 and everywhere, then suddenly the world looks really, really different and much more exciting. I think what we're going to start seeing is that systems get built intended for agents as opposed to built specifically for people. And we're already starting to see that in terms of documentation being reframed as MCP servers. Agents go and look at the docs so we don't have to. I don't think anybody likes weeding through documentation. But this is only going to become more common long term. And you can easily imagine as well personalized software being built specifically for you in mind, designed the way that you might be interested in, and then also hyper-personalized for whatever you might be looking for at the time. So the world is going to change pretty dramatically, and I think that there's never been a better time to be a developer and to start thinking about some of these problems.
No, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Mani, coming to you on the investment, perspective, one of the trends that we all seeing as I mentioned in the beginning, the investment is favoring towards the lean giants, meaning startups who are building, making big ARR revenue with the tiny teams. Is large team is becoming now a risk for investors, when they look at the VCs, look at this, or is it as a strength? And how are you also, what's your ideal revenue per employee target that you're looking at? I don't know if that is something that you look at, but are we seeing change in how unicorns are going to define, based on the trends that we are seeing? So would love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, so one of the defining things that we are seeing in this ecosystem is that there are large companies, large outcomes being built with very few employees, right? So coming here, I was looking at some comparison metrics for you, just 3 data points. Infosys, very large, very efficient public market company. Revenue per employee is about $50,000. Emergent, a new age vibe coding company, yesterday announced they have a 100 million run rate and they have about 100-200 employees. So that's about a $500,000 per employee productivity, right? And then last data point, how many in the room have used Claudebot? Okay, a lot of them. Okay, cool. So Claudebot got sold to OpenAI, undisclosed amount, but built by one person in an open source way. And speculatively would have probably sold for about 50 million USD, right? So 50K per employee at Infosys, 500K per employee at Emergent, and then 50 million at one employee. And then there is this obsession in the Bay Area about building the billion-dollar company, right? So what we are seeing is that we are able to create outcomes as a service, outcome as a product, using very few employees. And that is essentially raising the bar for what is expected outcome from a company. Because essentially it gives you a cost advantage, right? If an Emergent can, or a Google product can essentially empower you so that you can create that amount of with fewer employees, you are in comparison to a legacy company at a cost advantage, and that gets delivered to customers as an outcome. The last aspect of this is also around this fear that AI will take jobs because you need fewer employees per output to be produced. But essentially what we are seeing is some form of Jevons paradox, where you see that once things become much more cheaper, there is much more demand for that also happening. So for example, again coming back to emergent, 70-80% of their consumers are actually SMBs in India and abroad, which are using, in the past they would have used an Excel and a WhatsApp stack, now they're using the entire web stack to be able to deliver quality to their customers. So that's how we see this growing and essentially creating more opportunities for micro entrepreneurs as well.
Thanks for sharing that. I think very insightful. Madhav, you are working on legal tech space, which is very tricky, even before AI also, right? But when it comes to achieving anti-fragile in the space like legal tech, it's hard won. You have a lot of sort of complex contract that you're looking into. Can you trust the AI to sort of do a lot of these things? I know sort of use in a very smart way, but can you also share with the audience, how do you sort of handle hallucination logic when it comes to like complex tasks like legal? Would love to share your sort of, hear your perspective on that, yeah.
Yeah, I think with legal contracts, you don't get the opportunity to be wrong. And at the same time, lawyers want to still be in control. They don't want to necessarily give up that agency to the agent. So what we do is try to give them as much insight as possible while letting the agent do as much of the work as possible. So that means explicitly designing the user interface, the workflows, the experience in a way that the lawyers can take the final call. They can see the reasoning, the thinking behind why the agent took a particular decision, and then let them decide based on that. And it's actually a funny story because when we started off, we were a contract review tool building custom models. And of course, that meant we were a services company because every customer you need to onboard, you have to build a custom model for. Then we realized, okay, if you capture the data while the lawyer is doing what they do, then we can actually train these models to be more effective without having to train custom models. And now finally we've come to a place where these general purpose models have become capable enough that we can actually rely on them to take these decisions. So the key thing is being able to have enough data that you can reliably evaluate the model and give an answer saying, is it going to be accurate or not? And then surfacing that to the user. So we've actually gone one step forward where the user can see exactly the reasoning, but also see how it's behaved in the past. So you have a full observability view of each agentic run. And a lot of times these agents are actually working in the background. So what we do is show that even when you come to a contract that has been edited or redlined by an agent, you can see exactly the reasoning traces behind it, the decision making, what data it actually used to do that, and then the lawyer can come and say, you know what, it's actually you're using the wrong data because it's relied on a European contract for an Indian customer, and that's what we need to fix. So it's all about making sure the user has enough visibility that they can then trust the agent. If you just give a black box, they're not going to trust it because now they have to do all that reasoning manually. And at that point, instead of saving time, it's actually adding more effort for the user.
Just a follow-up question there, like how much, when you sort of, you were, Spotraf is not an AI native company, it didn't born as an AI first company, but I think eventually sort of adopted. When you sort of integrated AI, how much time it took to sort of get the first customer that, use, trust AI to, in the legal space? Just curious on that side.
So we've actually been an AI first company or AI native company, but we were a little early to the game. The models were not there yet. We were talking about transformers in this room earlier, so we were using the first version of that. We trained our own BERT. So to get the first customer onboarded, it sort of boiled down to how much data we had, which we could use to give a good experience. So this customer had been with us for 2 years, but then we enabled the AI features for them and they were able to see a lift. I think if we had gotten them fresh, and this is 3 years, 4 years back, we would probably not have been able to give them as good an experience because we didn't have the data to A, trust the AI's output, and then B, to fine-tune whatever needed to be changed.
Makes sense, thank you. And congrats on your recent fundraising as well. I think big round of applause to Spotraf for that. Yes, and that's a great validation of everything that you're doing. Yeah.
We are also hiring aggressively, so if anyone is
There
looking,
you go. um, nice way to plug it in. Dr. Paneerselvam, I think you have a unique perspective to share here. I think everyone is waiting to hear from you probably. Under India AI mission, the lot of initiatives and even Meety Startup Hub doing to equip startups to build India's own model or application level use cases from India. So for example, now we have like more than 38,000 GPUs. There is initiatives like AI Coach data sets, etc. How can Indian startups leverage this public trails to build startups that is resilient to sort of global fluctuations? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you. So definitely, I think the government is doing its role in terms of building the, we all now know the 5 layers of how the AI stack is, and so the infrastructure layers being strengthened quite significantly by providing, the access to compute capability, the access to the, infrastructure, and more importantly, the funding support that is required for our startups to build. But the key, to build something that is, to answer your question, the resilient part, I think we should build for India, build for Bharat. I think the real opportunity, we have been a resilient economy with its own merits. If you look at the last 20, 25 years, despite macroeconomic global trends, we have managed to stay somewhat insulated in terms of the economic impacts that has affected the other parts of the world, and that is essentially because of the domestic resilience that we have. And if you continue to build for Bharat and tap and leverage the domestic potential and solve problems for real in the Indian context, of course, that can now be extrapolated to the larger global south as well, then you are in a much better position to kind of build a very resilient startup that is not really impacted by the global. So, the fundamentals don't change. The methodology, the technology, the capability, the potential, the toolkits can change. The fundamentals: are you solving a real problem, and is someone who's willing to pay for that solution? And most importantly, is the solution scalable? So that the fundamentals of those don't really change. It's a question of, and when you look at a large and a huge market opportunity like India, and you pick up problem statements that really impact the entire country in a holistic nature, that is where you have huge opportunities and scale to build, not just, and whatever works in the Indian context today, I can assure you it is working in at least another 15, 20 countries. With a little bit of fine tuning, it will be applicable for that markets as well. So I think Indian entrepreneurs are very well placed, and I think both in India AI Mission or be it in Mighty Startup Hub, our role is to facilitate as much as we want to. It's about the ingenuity of the entrepreneur, the ingenuity of the innovator still remains the core of solving those problems, and that's where the real, I would say, instead of the anti-fragile, you need to be agile, building agile startups that are continuing to pivot in a very, very short-term pivots. It's not like you pivot once when a COVID hits you. That era is over. You got to pivot, in a very, very short term, and that's where the capability lies, the opportunity lies.
Just to echo Dr.
Yeah.
Naringwal's point, sometimes we get obsessed with AI or obsessed with the idea that everything has to be done through the prism of AI. While that is a useful starting point, to echo Sir's point, we are looking at a lot of high impact opportunities, low hanging fruits in India already. So if you think from anything from governance to civic tech to building something in public policy or building consumer tech, there are so many first degree problems that can be solved. That doesn't need necessarily AI washing. We need to start with understanding what are the problems that customers or constituents are facing, and then address that using technology or AI wherever it's appropriate.
Thanks for sharing that, sir and Manik. Coming back to you, Paige, we are seeing, startups building incredible complex, stacks on top of evolving APIs. I think we have models coming every 6 months, every 3 months or something like that. Probably every day, yeah. how can founders build anti-fragile tech debt system that actually improves itself? Like, I mean, when the model or the API is underlined, like keep changing. Like, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, excellent question. So I feel like if anybody in the room feels overwhelmed by the number of models, the number of features that are landing every single day, you're not alone. It's hard to keep up even for Googlers for all of the things that are just coming out of Google DeepMind, much less the rest of the AI ecosystem. I think that the best thing that you can do as a startup founder is build in such a way that you benefit from any new model update that might come down the pipe. And so an example of this is that when models were first released, their context windows were very, very small. So think on the order of a couple 100,000 or a couple thousand tokens, like 16,000 tokens, 8,000 tokens. And there was this mad rush from everyone to build things like vector databases, to be able to work around this artificial constraint of a very few number of tokens being able to be incorporated into the model. Fast forward a year later, and now every single model seems to have on the order of hundreds of thousands or millions of tokens as part of the context window. And some of these tools that were previously required in order to do work are no longer necessarily kind of as integral to the system as they were previously. So don't build around constraints of the models as they exist today. Come at it from the perspective of they're going to be perfect. They're going to be super cheap. So even if they're very expensive now, that cost will go down. And they're going to be blazingly fast. So even if you're not getting responses as quickly as you would want today, just wait 6 months and that will change. So I think that as a startup founder is one of the best things that you can focus on, and also focus on if the cost of software and writing software is going down to zero, how do you differentiate yourself in terms of real world contexts? You know, we were talking about some of these problems that are kind of infrastructure problems or things that deeply impact every person's life. How do you find those opportunities that are very sticky or build in the bits plus atoms space? So you're not just focused on software, you're also thinking about things like hardware or robotics or something similar. So that's, I don't know how useful that was, but like that's the recommendation that I would give, is that, you know, the world is changing under our feet, and we got to change with it. And all of the systems and all of the signals we're seeing are rewarding folks who are high agency, who will build, who will test things out, and who don't wait to be told what to do.
No, makes sense. No, thanks for sharing that. Mani, coming back to you, I think initially we mentioned about the startups are building applications so fast. I think downside of that is, like, I mean, you're also seeing, like, I mean, failing fast, right? Because they're building, some of the models are sort of absorbing some of this, the use cases that, startups are building. What is your recommendation, from the investor perspective for founders in the room, like, I mean, to build a stronger business that is also sustainable? Like, I mean, how do you sort of approach? Do you have any do we generally have any recommendation, or is just, as she mentioned, like, I mean, this is the world we are living in, so should we just see how things goes and still keep building? But yeah, would love to hear your perspective on that.
Just by a show of hands, how many of you are founders in the room? How many of you are founders with more than 5 years of founding experience? Okay. So we are looking at relatively younger population of AI first founders, right? And we are looking at this emerging world in which a lot of models almost keep shipping and coming overnight. A question that a founder needs to ask themselves is, with successive improvements from Gemini 2 to Gemini 3, is my model delivering better value to the end customer or not? If the answer is no, then essentially we are somewhere being a wrapper, so to say. And if we are actually increasing the value and the external value to the customer and internal productivity of our organization, in that case, we are actually an AI native company. We need to also understand this fact that, back in my IT days, for example, needing a tech co-founder was the biggest impediment. Until you had a tech co-founder, you could not build anything. That is no longer the case, right? So we are able to build products, MVPs, almost by thinking and prompting over them, right? And then in that world, what matters is customer problem solving. Customer cares about outcomes. High impact problems require out of the box thinking. How do we think of this from first principles angle and then just use AI as an enablement platform to be able to deliver that solution to the customer in the most efficient and effective way possible. As long as we stick to solving customer problem backwards, rather than trying to build forward an AI native or some kind of sexy company, we are going to be doing okay.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing that. Madhav, we are also seeing, like, I mean, startups or any companies, developers generally using, vibe coding platform or using AI to sort of help them code, generate code. As a CTO, like, I mean, how are you sort of restructuring your engineering team into in a way that, okay, they also sort of being more productive? How's your company looking at, like, I mean, using AI in the, the coding space? Would love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, there's a few different things there. One is that, if people in the team are not using AI, they're going to get left behind by someone who is. So that's now almost a requirement for anyone in the engineering space. The second one, and I think someone mentioned this in one of the earlier sessions, is I don't even look at, product engine design as three separate verticals anymore. They're just focus areas. We have product managers shipping code on a daily basis. We have designers making design fixes on a daily basis. So it's more about who has that agency to actually go in and make the change, as opposed to having these boundaries that define what you can and cannot do. And I think the biggest one is, given the agents are now capable enough to do at least 80-90% of the work, a lot of the onus is now on people, engineers, to actually manage a team of agents. We had an engineer who shipped 40 bug fixes over the weekend while he was hiking. So he had a bunch of agents running. He came back on Monday and he's like, now I need someone to review the code. So I see the bottleneck shifting from the code being written to actually the code being reviewed, tested. So a lot of the SDLC pipeline is going to move from, code being the bottleneck to validation, testing being the bottleneck. And I think that's a great opportunity again for other kinds of agents to come in. But we see, like, a pretty good improvement in terms of output, where we are shipping with the same number of people 20 features in a quarter. Now we've hit like 50 last quarter.
That's amazing. And like one anecdote related to this, we also have a bunch of folks within our team who are sharing how they're using agents in order to accelerate their work. Everything from like writing documentation to taking in, kind of synthesizing bug filing on GitHub, and then having all of the bugs get fixed autonomously over the weekend. And I think you saw me also, we've been hanging out a lot over the course of the last couple of days. Like, I've always got my laptop open and like a bunch of agents in anti-gravity working to try to do things. So strong agree. Like, we're all members of the technical staff now, no matter what our titles were before.
Yeah, someone was mentioning the exactly same point. Coming back to Dr. Paneerselvam, how is government helping, creating this lean giant from like smaller cities, like tier 2, tier 3? I think that has been a focus for Meety Startup Hub and generally for government. And what is the role, that government or localize this culture represented to AI play in the scaling playbook? Like, I mean, do you see, like, I mean, more and more like AI startups coming from the smaller city as a trend? But how can also sort of all of us can support creation of those startups from the smaller cities as well? Yeah.
Yeah. So as I said, both for Meety Startup Hub and the government of India, I think the vision is very clear that we have to broad base this capability of capacity building beyond the metros, beyond the Bangalore's and the Hyderabad's, the Gurgaons, and we want to push this to the Coimbatores and the Surats of the world to ensure that there is a very significant talent that is available there, gets nurtured, gets mentored, and get an ability to build in their local ecosystem. And that's been a very strong priority. and there is a humongous amount of work, especially through, today I'll let you know about 17 ministries in the central government work on startup programs. It's not just Startup India, it's not just MeitY Startup Hub, Ministry of Defense has a program called IDEX. So there are, every agriculture ministry has their own startup program, the Ministry of Power has their own startup. Everybody wants to kind of work with the startups and push this beyond the metros. And there is 3 M's that we are focusing on. One is, of course, building a very strong mentorship network that is available for startups in the Tier 2, Tier 3 cities. Because, and that's where we work with the MeitY at least, we work with about 150 plus incubators and accelerators across the country to kind of help them to nurture the young entrepreneurs in residence kind of a program. And then we graduate them to into early stage startups, and then the entire life stage of us, from an idea to a growth stage, there is handholding support that is available for the Tier 2, Tier 3 entrepreneur or innovator today. And more importantly, it's not just, the first one is of course mentorship. The second is, we are very keen on market access, because no matter, I always, those who have heard me in the past will probably hear me repeating this: customer is your best investor, right? So getting the customer and in kind of getting the customer money is the cheapest money, right? So you got to earn that, and we support in creating market access programs. And that's where organizations like Google, we work together very efficiently to bring market access to them. And last, the third M is money/funding. If all the founders, I'm telling you, there is no dearth of money in the ecosystem today. What is really important is the quality of the company, and the fundamental structure of the solution that you are building is what the real issue is. If I can be drawing a lot of flack. If you put in AI for the sake of AI, or what I call the AI tadka in every startup, that is not going to work, right? You need to build fundamentally good companies, and money will follow you. And that is we are seeing that trend of a lot more effective in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, because they are now building, solving problems for the local ecosystem, they're solving problems for the real issues there. And that's where we are willing to facilitate far more startups. You'll see a lot more fundamentally strong companies coming in from Tier 2, Tier 3 cities in the next 3 to 5 years.
Thank you. I was told that we are almost at time, but I just want to ask one last question. If you all can answer in a one word, one line probably, what's your prediction for 2026 when it comes to AI landscape? Who will want to go first, and then we'll wrap it up with that.
Massive Indian tech company making it global.
Yeah, would love to see that. A big round of applause for that. Anyone else? Any prediction?
I think a lot of inference moving on device as new devices come on that have those capabilities, and we are partnering with Qualcomm to deliver that.
I think potential for India to leapfrog to another orbit in this year.
Absolutely.
I am a huge fan of bits plus atoms, so software plus physical world systems plus building things like communities and really, really enriching the communities that we all live in. So bits plus atoms, that would be mine.
Love that. Thank you so much. With that, a big round of applause to all the panelists. Thank you so much for all the insights that you all shared. Really appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you.
Check. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Request you all to please either exit the room or wait for the next session. We'll start in the next 10 minutes for a very insightful discussion on democratizing insights for all. Also, may I request everybody who's leaving to please scan the QR codes at the doors to leave your valuable feedback for us. Thank you.